MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Shane Kuhlman's with us. He's from Centerstone. We also have Megan Powell. She's a caregiver and with the Dole Foundation, talking about care for the caregivers. We've got some phone calls we can take, and actually we'll take James, who waited through the break. That's cool. James, good morning. How are you, James?
Good. Good morning. How are you folks?
Good. Well, what's on your mind?
I've had a couple versions of what you're talking about. My grandmother, we rehabbed her, and we went through rotation. It's a large family, so we all rotated through, and the ones that didn't, I shamed. You sorry, dog. You want to be over here. And the other was my mother-in-law. She was Alzheimer's patient, and I'd read a couple books and talked to a doctor, and he told me, he said, look, man, to keep her sharp, kind of lie to her about an unbelievable lie and let her catch you in it. And I was like, all right. And moving patients around, man, buy a really good towel like you use at a beach. One of the real long ones, heavy count, you can slide it right under their butt. One guy on one side, one guy on the other side of the towel, you can slide them right in, out of a chair, right into a vehicle.
Huh. Interesting, yeah. Let's face it, some of these people are dealing with individuals that aren't mobile anymore. They can't really walk around. He hit on something there. Sometimes when the memory's lost, you probably don't do this with your husband, as you say, he's high functioning, but sometimes you tell them whatever's going to make them feel good. I mean, you know, don't dispute it, because the odds are, and what I'm saying and what he said is, you lie to them. I've lied to my parents. It took a while to get to that point. They forget it the next second, but I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not going to tell them something that's going to upset them. If they ask it, no matter how outlandish, like, you got it. We're going to Greece next week, and I'm getting the airline tickets. Oh, that's so good. They're on top of the world. They forget about it by the next day, but I made them feel good. Why should I say, no, we don't have money for Greece? What are you talking? Don't lie to them. There's absolutely zero wrong with that in that instance, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It takes a while to shift your perspective and really understand that you know, this is really for them. This isn't about me and how I feel, because I feel guilty by doing this, but that's my feelings. That's not them, right? Like, I feel guilty by doing this, and you probably still have some bit of that in there, and it doesn't go away. No. But like, you're doing it for them, and I think that's key, is really understanding, okay, this is for them, this is to make them happy in that moment. This is still my parents, this is still them. You know, it's just a different way of interacting with them.
So right. And it's hard, but you get there. I wanted to ask too, though, as they get to this point, some of the legal issues here, I talk about it with an elder care attorney that comes on this show, but at some point with some of these, to make things easier, as you say, sometimes running around and dealing with it, do you talk at all, when you do any of this counseling with some of the family caregivers, about getting power of attorney for things like legal or medical? I'm just saying, and maybe it's different with husband and wife, but I had to get that for my parents. Without it, and without being able to help them with their finances or some questions from their doctors, oh, it's a pain in the butt. Yeah. Do you talk about the importance of that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Depending on different circumstances. I mean, it's not hard
to get that. This is not a hard thing.
It's not. It is in various circumstances. There are some challenges, especially when it comes to the intermingling of substance misuse, and if that's progressing other mental health disorders like Alzheimer's or dementia in various ways, that can be challenging. But yes, that's really key for their well-being at various stages for mental health disorders.
Do you have to address any of that at all, financial at this point, anything there?
Right now we don't, but I know plenty that do. And that's one of the things that we've really been talking about with the foundation, is going ahead and having a plan. Have the conversation of, you know, what do you want in funeral, and all of that, and just making sure that you're staying on top of plans, because, you know, you never know. You know, ideally, there's probably not going to be a shortage of life with my husband's stuff, but I know plenty that there are. And the ones that are prepared and have a little better idea have a way easier go of it.
Prepare if you can. You know, I'm looking at some of these numbers, the foundation, and this one blows me away. Over 1 million American young people aged 8 to 18 care for an adult relative on a daily. I couldn't care for myself, certainly when I was 8, much less 18. So these are youngsters caring probably for a parent or a grandparent on a daily basis. I can't even fathom that.
We just had one of the EDF calls them hidden helpers, and I love the term because they are. We have one of them at home. He's only 6, but he can tell you. He knows what, like I said, he knows what a stormy day is. But we have, within the foundation, we have one of the children who, he has an incredible gift for speaking, but he'll tell you he had 3 suicide attempts.
Is that the? Yeah.
Yep, that's the little man. That's been a few years ago.
Okay, he's bigger now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little bit bigger now. But he, I mean, like I said, he knows, and he is very much a hidden helper because he knows when I say, hey, it's a stormy day, then the behavior has to get a little different because that means that daddy's already anxious, and we don't want anything else to make it more difficult. And that's, especially and that number is just for military and veteran. And there's way more that are doing it out there that don't have a military and veteran affiliation. But the kids play a huge role in it because you can't live in a house with anything that requires care and not be a part of it.
And so ultimately they have to get to the point, and I'm sure your son does he understand why his father has some of these issues? I mean, he's only 6, so that's awful young, but how have you been able to articulate it?
So at 3.5, he walked in on me watching an episode of Sesame Street. Sesame Street has a complete line for military families, and then they have a line for caregivers. I was just going to watch the episode because I thought, no way, he's 3.5, he can't understand this. And he happened to walk in and go, Sesame Street! And I went, uh-oh. And as the episode finished, I'm in tears because I'm literally watching our life play out on the screen. And they refer to it as a stormy day. And a few weeks later it was a bad night. Daddy was just in a bad mood. And I told him, I said, you go take a break. And I looked at Andrew and I said, I need a favor. I said, I need you, Daddy's having a stormy day, and I need you to help me out. And instantly his demeanor changed. Whatever I asked, he did. Wow. And that was the moment that I realized at 3.5, because it was put into his terms, he understood what we were living with. And I had my therapist years ago, it was our family therapist, told us, give it a term. Don't be afraid when you're around kids. You can probably talk more about this than I can. Give it a term. So ours was the PTSD monster. That way there is a differentiation for them of, this is not the person that you see in front of you. This is what he has, and this is what makes him that way, to differentiate.
Wow, you're raising a child who's going to have understanding and empathy. It's a good kid. And so,
absolutely.
As she said, you want to echo that. I think it's interesting. You come up with these phrases, which makes sense that a child will understand on a complex issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think naming something is really important. It gives us distance, really, between that person and what they're struggling with. And we do that for adults, too, right? I think that's really important to acknowledge that putting a name to something is really important for some people. Some people don't, but I truly think it helps us get that distance. So, one thing I hear when you're saying that, and I'm sure there's some people, I'm thinking about it, so I'm sure other people probably are thinking about it, is that there may be some judgment around bringing your kid into this conversation and having this, but I think doing that and being proactive in that way, giving him that name, doing this and distancing himself, it helps prepare him for those situations and prepare both of you. And so I just want to say that's a valiant effort on your part, and what you're struggling with is that's really key to do that and take those steps to be able to do that for yourself.
We talked earlier about some of the, what did you call them, the adult daycare where you can take them, drop them off?
Respite care.
Respite care, okay. So on the other side of the coin, then sometimes people can find ways to bring in someone to watch a loved one while they go do grocery store shopping. And one way to do this, if you are a friend of a family and you know them well, you could offer and say, hey, listen, Megan, you probably have stuff to do. I have the afternoon free. I like your husband. I'll come by and sit with him or be there with your little boy while you go. Those types of things of bringing someone in and sitting. I'm just trying to think of the other options as someone. And the bigger option is eventually you realize, I just can't handle this anymore. And if you have the means to put them in some type of facility, an assisted living facility where there are nurses 24 hours or whatever, and that's expensive. And just so you know, Medicaid doesn't pay for that. Unless you're broke. and then you got to get on a waiting list to get into a Medicaid qualified facility.
Yeah, the tough thing with respite care for anyone, older adults or middle-aged adults, is when you think about this respite care, is you want to make sure that person understands in the same way as you. And I feel like you could feel guilty if something happened or didn't happen. So like that's the thing with something like respite care or nursing facilities like that they have. I think with friends and family, like involving them in that family support can be really helpful. It's something not often thought about when bringing them into the conversation, but bringing them into a family support session can be really helpful if you know that they're going to provide that respite care of any kind, so they have a little bit more higher awareness. It doesn't have to be every session, just a couple of primary things to do that, but that may be some option for some folks.
Yeah, because your example's a good one, and I hope it doesn't get much worse. But I mean, I'm just saying, some of these folks are there where, again, you get the handle on the 24/7, where these people now are pretty far gone, and you have to be there with them. I just don't know how they do it. I just don't know what the options are. I mean, and they stick around, and you just notice how much weight the caregiver loses. They're not only depressed, they're not getting a time to eat right. They don't go to the doctor themselves. Yeah. So who knows, right? And they're sometimes just as old as their husband, maybe. I mean, they're getting up in years. I mean, all those things come into play. You have to remember, schedule your doctor's appointments. Go. Yeah. Remember to eat, right? The things like just bathing yourself, cleaning the house, all of that stuff. When you're just afraid that your loved one could wander out of the house, or how many times in the news business do we have silver alerts? Yeah. Okay. And sometimes you wonder, well, how does someone get? I can tell you a zillion ways someone gets out of the house. It sure as heck isn't the family's fault. Yeah. Right. I mean, they do the best they can, and someone walks out, right? Yeah. I guess I'm looking for other options there. And again, part of the situation maybe that you can offer up is a lot of people don't have a lot of money, so they can't just pay for a caregiver to come in and help 5 days a week.
And that is one thing I will say, and I know that the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and I'm sure there's probably some on the civilian side that do it as well. They offer respite care. Okay. You can get up to, I believe it's 30 hours a month they will hire somebody that has been background checked and is trained in whatever.
So you have to call that, you get in touch with it?
You have to be a part of the foundation.
Okay.
And they come in.
That's a big deal,
If you want to take an afternoon and you actually want to have an afternoon for you as a caregiver and just go to a movie and do nothing, they're going to bring somebody in, and you're going to be able to do that. And like I said, I'm sure there's those organizations on the civilian side as well that can give you just a break, because sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you just need enough time to just step away from everything and reset, and for 5 minutes even, put yourself first. Because there are a lot of days where I'm running 8 different directions, and I'm dealing with him, and I'm dealing with everything else, and it's like, okay, just give me 5 minutes and let me get myself. For me, it's literally go through the Starbucks drive-through. Coffee is my coping mechanism, and so can I just go get a coffee, please? And that's generally a sign in our house of, okay, I've had enough. And so find your thing as the caregiver that it doesn't have to take long, but it just resets you.
And some churches provide services like that. If you have a church, not everyone goes to church, but if you do, you could look into that. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. We'll come back. Our final segment with our guests right after this.